Hi, I'm Ali Jennings and welcome to this How to Sharpen a Wildlife Shot video tutorial. Almost any digital picture that you take is going to need a certain amount of sharpening. You'll often be looking through your images and notice that the detail within them is a little bit soft. And this becomes even more apparent when you're dealing with the fine detail of wildlife photography. So what we're going to do here is just to show you a very quick way to sharpen your images, and this should always be done as the very last enhancement that you do to your pictures. So if we take a look at the image after we've sharpened it, we can really see how crispness of the shot has really been enhanced. So we'll get straight into it, and the first thing we'll do is go back to the original image and we're going to just duplicate our background layer. Now to do that, just drag and drop it onto the new layer icon, or just right click and select duplicate layer. So making sure we've got the background copy selected, we're going to use adjust sharpness, and you'll find that under the enhance menu. If you're using Photoshop CS, then you'll find the sharpness tools all under the filters menu. So for this particular image we're going to use adjust sharpness. If your image is suffering from quite a bit of noise, then you can use unsharp mask. There we have a threshold slider which just helps to compensate the effect of the introduction of noise caused by sharpening. So just close that down, go back to enhance and open up adjust sharpness. And what we want to do is adjust the amount and the radius slider in tandem just to really pull out the detail. So I'll take those both down to about 0. And as a starting point I'm going to take the radius up to about 1. Now the radius basically means the pixels around the contrast edge. So if we take this area here between the back of the bird and the sky, that will be the contrast edge, and it's basically the amount of pixels on either side. So 1 pixel either side for our starting point. Then as we increase the amount, it increases the amount of sharpening around that point. If we want to see how the sharpening is affecting the image at any point, all we need to do is left click into the image and you'll see the original, release the left mouse button and you'll see the sharpening effect. So at about a radius of 1 and an amount of roughly 50, we're getting quite a nice sharpening effect. If I just quickly scroll around the image just to see how that's going, and it's looking pretty good. Now I'm just going to increase the radius by 0.5 and we can now really see the effects of the sharpening. Going to take up to about 80, and now what we can see is we're getting an almost sort of painter-like effect within the feathers. We're really losing the detail again. So I want to just reduce the radius down to about 1.2 and take the amount down to about 60. And now we can see from the before and after we're getting a really nice crisp sharp image. So it is important just to move those two in tandem and just to check that you're not sort of destroying all of the detail of the feathers, and also that you're not getting that painter-like effect or any haloing being introduced. Now it's a very quick example. If I just zoom the radius up to about 13, we can now really see that painter-like effect. You can really see how the details are disappearing, and if I increase the amount as well, we start to get that haloing in around the edges, and it's looking pretty nasty. So I take the amount back down to 70 and the radius I think to 1.2, and that's looking really rather nice. Now in the settings I just want to make sure that I've got more refine ticked, and then I can just click OK to apply the sharpening to the image. Now if I look at the original and the sharpened, it's already starting to look a lot better. Now if you're finding that the sharpening is just a little bit too much on your image, you can always reduce the opacity of the layer slightly, just so that it mixes the unsharpened and the sharpened layers together. Now with this image, as with many wildlife shots, you'll have a blurred background because you've used depth of field, just to really make the subject stand out, and so you really don't want any sharpening being applied to your background layer. So the easiest way to combat this is to use a layer mask. So what we're going to do is very quickly in elements to create a levels layer. Just going to click OK, then drag and drop that in between the background and the background copy layer. Hold down Alt and hover our mouse just in between the background copy and our new levels layer and left click, and that'll clip the levels layer to the background copy layer. And the reason we're doing that is that we can now use the mask as a layer mask for this image. Now what we want to do is to hide the whole of this background copy layer by using the mask. So if we go over to our paint bucket, make sure that we've got black as our foreground colour, and you can reset the colour palette just by hitting D, and swap the foreground and background colours around just by hitting X. Once we've done that, make sure you've got your layer mask selected and just left click into the image. And you can now see the whole of the layer mask is filled with black. That done, we're just going to switch our colour swatches, so white is back as the foreground. Select our brush. Make sure that we've got quite a nice large brush with a soft edge, about 300 selected. We want to use that brush just to reveal the sharpened layer through the mask. Now around the head and feathers, and also down to the feet, we want those all nice and sharp, so we use a nice white colour swatch. If we want to adjust the brush size, we just use the square bracket tools just to increase or decrease the size. And again, we can just use that on the feet just to help with the sharpening there. And then with the feathers, which are slightly blurred anyway, we actually want to reduce the amount of sharpening that's being applied to those. So if we click the colour swatch, we'll just pick a grey, so put in about 50 for the brightness, increase the brush size, and then we can just brush over the blurred feathers just to bring in a little bit of sharpening to them, but not too much. So you can actually vary the amount of sharpening that's being applied to different areas of the picture. And of course we didn't really want any sharpening in that nice blue sky, so we've just left that completely masked out. And I also want to just bring in a little bit of sharpening to the water and the water drops here. So again, I can just use my grey brush just to bring those back in and through. So once you've adjusted the amount of sharpening applied to the various different parts of the image, you can then flatten the image down and you're ready to print. So to do that, all I'm going to do is go up to my layer options, select flatten image, and there we have the final sharpened picture.